Welcome to the 9th season of Hope Hospice's Family Caregiver Education Series. I'm Debbie Emerson, Hope's community health educator and certified dementia specialist. I've been a health educator for over 30 years, but I've also been a family caregiver for loved ones, and actually all of them who've had dementia. So my goal in all of our webinars is to share information with you that's based both on my professional training and on my personal experiences. So on Hope Hospice's Family Caregiver website, you can find a recording of this webinar and my online resource list. This list is especially important for this particular webinar as I'll be referring to it throughout the presentation. And I have also posted a copy of the senior housing chart that I'm going to be talking about later on in the webinar. So whether you're just starting to think about future care needs for either yourself or a loved one, or whether you're realizing that the current situation is in need of a change, which, by the way, happens all the time, I hope that this webinar will help you with some of your caregiving decisions. When I was developing the curriculum for the Family Caregiver Education Series, I knew that I needed to include a class about this topic because it's really foundational to everything we do as care partners. I'll try to not only give you good guidelines and tips, but I also will provide you with some excellent online resources. Because in 90 minutes, I can only skim the surface of this topic. Now, as I mentioned before, much of the information that I'll be sharing is based on my own experiences as a care partner. But even more is based on research, investigation, and things that I've learned from working with family caregivers and healthcare professionals over the past 8 years. So today's agenda, Care Planning 101, focuses on making those important decisions and working together with family members. Then we'll take a look at all of the options for care. I'll talk briefly about paying for long-term care, which, by the way, that can be a really complicated topic. So I have included some really good resources for you. And then we'll look at ways in which you can find housing options and services. All right, let's get started. So about 14 years ago, I was in your shoes, but I had no idea then about what to do, where to get help, how to ask for help, or the importance of taking care of myself. I felt very isolated and very incompetent. Now, I was a community health educator, but caring for the elderly and chronically ill was not my area of expertise. And the term family caregiver was not even in my vocabulary. So I had to learn by doing. So I'm here today to share with you what I learned while I was in the trenches and what I've learned in the years since. I still don't have all of the answers, and I never will. But what I can do is provide guidance and support to help you navigate your unique situation. So here are my goals for you for today. First of all, I think it's important to give yourselves a title. Your family care partners. Doing what you do goes beyond just being a good spouse, a loving son or a daughter, a devoted relative or friend. This role is an important part of your identity, and you need to acknowledge this. And once you do, it changes the way you see yourself. Now, it's kind of weird, at least it was for me, but giving yourselves that title, or giving myself that title, actually empowered me. Today, I'm going to stress the importance of communication. You cannot advocate for your loved one or yourself unless you use good communication skills with family members, healthcare professionals, or anyone else with whom you interact in the caregiving journey. We'll be looking at a variety of options for long-term care, everything from aging in place to facility placement. By the way, facilities today are so very different than the dreaded nursing homes of the past. A lot of people viewed those as one step above incarceration. But today's facilities are dedicated to addressing the social, emotional, and physical needs of their residents, and they really do try to focus on quality of life. Now, having had 4 very close relatives in facility care, over the past 12 years or so, I am so grateful for the care that facility staff have provided to my loved ones. And we'll talk more about this later. Now, you need to become aware of all of the resources online and in the community that are there to make your jobs a bit easier. And we'll be looking at some of those today. And you do need to understand that every situation is unique. What works for others may not work for you. And what worked for you today may not work for you tomorrow. There is no universal template or plan for caregiving. However, it's always helpful to talk with others just to get their ideas and some recommendations. There's no right or wrong way to do things. You're going to make mistakes, sometimes the same ones over and over, because there's a lot of trial and error in caregiving. So be sure to forgive yourself when you mess up. Those of you who are caring for a loved one with dementia already know that this condition adds another layer of complexity to your decisions and your actions. Flexibility and creativity are your friends. And educating yourself about dementia is the best gift that you can give yourself and your loved one. And by the way, we have a great Living with Dementia program at Hope. Now, it's always important to be an informed consumer. Be careful. Providing care for another puts you in an emotionally vulnerable situation, and scammers know that. Be sure that you're not taken advantage of. There are a lot of online and phone scams, and anything that sounds too good to be true is. So be skeptical, ask questions. Never give any personal information online over the phone, especially not your Social Security or Medicare numbers. Social Security and Medicare will never call you unless you have asked them to. And try not to make decisions when you're in a crisis mode. I am a big advocate for advanced planning. Speaking of becoming an informed consumer, I want to help you with that. So these are two of my favorite books on the topic of care planning. Navigating Your Later Years, and this is one of the dummies books. It's relatively new, published in 2018. So the information is pretty much up to date. Honestly, it contains everything that I'm going to be talking about today and much, much more. Can't we talk about something more pleasant? Now, this is a very different care planning book. It's all in comic book style, and it's funny, irreverent, touching, relevant, and so validating of the caregiving journey. Sometimes I felt as if the author had lived inside my head as I was caring for my mom. Now, unfortunately, I read this book 4 months after my mom had already passed away. But it gave me such comfort, even after the fact, to know that I was not alone and that my experiences and my emotions were so common. And most of all, it made me laugh, and it still does to this day. I remember the immense feelings of isolation as I cared for my mom. And again, that was nearly 14 years ago. Today, our society is doing a much better job of caring for the carers. And there is so much support for what we do. Which brings me to my resource list. As always, I have a list of resources and links for you. For this webinar, there's 2 pages of them. And again, this document can be found on our website under the webinars listing. So both of these books, by the way, I've got the info about those on that resource list. So as I mentioned earlier, this is such a huge topic, and I won't be able to cover everything as well as I would like to in the next 90 minutes. So I hope you'll be motivated to continue learning after we're finished today. I thought it might be helpful to start with some definitions and statistics. So Medicare defines long-term care as a variety of services that help people with their medical and non-medical needs over a period of time. Long-term care can be provided at home, in the community, or in various other types of facilities, including nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Now, most long-term care is custodial care, which means that it doesn't involve actual medical needs. Custodial care refers to the type of personal care that helps with activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, eating, grooming, transferring from bed to chair or chair to toilet. This type of care is almost always private pay. Medicare is not going to cover it, but Medi-Cal may cover some of it, and I'll talk more about this later. Research conducted by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services tells us that 70% of those who are 65 today are going to need some kind of long-term support and services in their lifetime. So within that 70%, 42% will have a need that lasts more than a year at home. 42% will have a need that lasts less than a year at home, with some outside support from family, friends, and possibly healthcare professionals. 37% will need care in a facility that lasts less than a year, such as an assisted living facility and/or nursing home. Now, that less than a year sounds pretty good, right? However, the average duration of care is 3 years, and it's a bit more for women than men. That's because we women live longer. But the number that I really hate is this last one. 20% will need some sort of help for more than 5 years. Now, my aunt, who just recently passed away this past May, she was 102. She lived in a nursing home for nearly 10 years. So the odds are not in our favor. This is why it's so important that we educate ourselves and we plan in advance so we can make good decisions when the time comes. So who wants to even think about this stuff? I sure didn't back when my mom was starting to show signs that she wouldn't be able to stay in her home. My only experience until then was my grandmother. She lived on her own in an apartment behind my aunt's house till she was 95. She walked to the store every day. She did the gardening. She still hosted the whole family for Thanksgiving. And then a couple of days after a big family birthday party, she had a heart attack, and that was it. So that was my norm. And that left me wholly unprepared for the years in which my mom, her twin sister, and my in-laws would need care. So as hard as it is, it's really important to be prepared, to think about the what ifs, to plan for the worst case scenarios, to stop the denying that this won't happen to your mom, your husband, your wife, or yourself. It's so important to be organized, and I've given you lots of tools on my resource list to help with this. Some of you prefer doing everything online. Others like the tried and true notebooks and file folders. And it doesn't matter what system you use. What matters is that it works for you and that you keep careful notes and records and receipts for everything: financial, medical, household. This documentation will be invaluable in communicating and sharing information with siblings, other family members, and your healthcare providers. They need to be in the loop if they're going to help you. And the documentation will be essential if you end up working with attorneys or financial planners. Documentation is also necessary if you ever want to apply for any type of public assistance, such as veterans benefits or Medi-Cal. You've heard the old saying, the only constant is change. So you have to be flexible and expect that whatever wonderful solution you've come up with, or whatever perfect living arrangement you've secured, will probably need to be changed because circumstances change. For example, about a year after finally getting my mom settled in a lovely senior apartment in a continuing care facility, she had a serious heart attack and could no longer care for herself. So we had to make another move to assisted living, and that was hard for all of us. Relationships can change. Family members who were there to help you suddenly move or have their own crisis to handle. People die. People get divorced. Your favorite physician may decide to retire. Plans change, and we need to expect this. So again, don't get too excited when you think you've come up with the perfect solution. Get ready with plan B when plan A no longer works. Now, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, just realistic. However, you can never go wrong when you try to always make your loved one's needs and wishes your number one priority. So how do we do that? Having the talk about long-term care is not easy for anyone. Think about it from your own perspective. It makes us face our own mortality. It makes us question our independence and our competence. It makes us feel as if we're giving up control. It is not pleasant. And we always think we have more time. Decisions made in a crisis situation are usually not well thought out. In fact, in a crisis situation, either the circumstances or other people will make the decision for us. Now, some people like that because it diffuses the responsibility and it lessens the blame. That's true. However, we may lose some or all of our good options. It's important for all involved to be part of the decision-making process. Know that you'll never have complete control of a situation, but being a part of the process is better than leaving it to chance. Now, when talking with the one for whom you're providing care and with other family members, it's always important to find a good time to talk. A time when you can have a relaxed, calm conversation that's free of distractions. A big family gathering is probably not the best time. Sometimes there are what we call teachable moments or opportune times that may crop up. But in general, we want to try to designate a time in advance. Always avoid bringing up sensitive topics when you're angry or feeling stressed or impatient. When we realized that my 90-year-old mom could no longer live in her home that she'd been in for 60 years, the home I grew up in, we started slowly broaching the subject. By the way, I first talked with my brother and sister-in-law because moving mom was a huge decision and we needed to be sure that we were all in agreement. We talked with our mom about how much work her house and yard had become. And my mom knew that my brother and I were spending a lot of time with her with household tasks, and she really didn't want to be a burden to us. Our big concern was that we didn't feel that she was safe living alone in her house, and that the time had come when she was no longer safe driving. We had to take baby steps. We weren't reacting to a crisis. Now, I'm a planner by nature and always tend to look at the what ifs. And this tendency actually served us well. I also knew that I wanted my mom to be very involved in the decision. So I started planting seeds. I began casually sharing stories about friends' parents who'd moved into retirement communities, senior apartments, and assisted living. I asked her questions like, if you needed to leave your house, where do you think you would like to live? What's important to you? I encouraged her to visit some of her friends who'd moved into facilities. Now, I do know that we had it easy because my mom was not too resistant. But I've encountered others whose parents and spouses would not even consider a move. And this is really hard. There is a really good article on my resource list that addresses this. It's called Moving Your Parents to Senior Living, Overcoming the Guilt. So the reality is, sometimes things have to get worse before they'll get better. Sometimes our loved ones won't agree to a change unless there are no other options, unless there's that crisis. I fully recognize that, and I realize that that's how many people operate. However, it's always best to try to do some advanced planning. And I suspect that that's why you're here today. When we provide care for someone, our parents, our spouses, it's common to shift our role from adult child or spouse to a parental role. And it's natural because we feel as if we need to manage the situation, make the rules, set the agenda, just like we did when we were parenting our children. But our parents and our spouses are not our children. So look at yourself as a partner. You and your loved one for whom you're providing care have a common goal. You have a mutual interest. Your goal is to collaborate and work together for a common purpose. As a partner, you share what's important to you, but you also listen closely to understand the values, the goals, and the needs of those for whom you're providing care. Adults don't want to be treated like children, especially by their own children or their spouses. So we need to shift the perspective from parenting to partnering. It's your job to reassure that you want to be on the same team. You want to be a partner in their best future. You want to be sure they understand that your goal is to collaborate with them to make sure that their needs, their beliefs, their values are upheld. You want to be their advocate. You want to reassure them that you are never attempting to switch roles or to control them. And we need to teach others to trust us through our actions. So we need to make every action worthy of trust. And when you stay true to that intention, it will make a difference in how well you listen, and it will influence what you say. Now, in some cases, actually many cases, caregiving would be a lot easier if we didn't have to deal with family members who aren't in agreement and who may seem to have their own agenda. It's not unusual for family tensions to erupt as options for long-term care are being considered, not just initially, but also when the care when the care needs change. Family dynamics are complex. With our siblings, we continue to carry and relive the struggles that began in childhood. Sibling rivalries tend to resurface, and the lists of concerns and grievances often expand with age. The care recipient may play a big role in our roadblocks to care planning. They may not want to discuss important issues for several reasons. They want to avoid conflicts and rivalries among family members. They may feel that these matters are very, very private, or they may fear that someone is going to exploit them, drain their bank accounts, take their stuff. And honestly, who likes to talk about end-of-life issues? Many people don't even have an advanced healthcare directive in place or have designated a power of attorney. Now, the good news here is that if someone is going to work with an attorney or financial planner to do a living trust, they're going to be required to name a power of attorney and complete an advanced healthcare directive or document. This is also true when someone enters the hospital. But again, taking care of these items in advance of a crisis is always best. I mentioned sibling rivalries in the previous slide, but tensions can also erupt as families tend to move beyond the traditional nuclear family to families that include step-parents and siblings, half-brothers and sisters, in-laws, exes, and so on. And all of this can be further compounded by those who live out of the area and are only superficially involved in providing care. In other words, distance caregivers. There is no one-size-fits-all answer because every situation is unique. But your best bet in diffusing any issue is communication and transparency. I can't overemphasize the importance of working together with family members as you provide care for your loved one. Try to avoid those power struggles, especially when it comes to legal and financial matters. Inheritance disputes are deadly, and they can tear families apart. Be sure to communicate with everyone involved in their care. It can be tempting to exclude the difficult family members, especially those who never seem to go along with the plan. But that exclusion can come back to bite you. We talked earlier about the importance of establishing trust. This is so important when you work together with your family members. As the care manager, you need to focus on compromise, transparency, and taking the high road. And always remember that your number one priority has to be the care recipient's well-being. When I was doing all this stuff years ago, I remembered a couple of friends whose families got completely fractured over the whole care planning thing. The damage that was done to their relationships was irreparable. And I knew that I didn't want that to happen to my family. So, along with making my mom's needs my priority, I also prioritize the importance of preserving my relationship with my brother and sister-in-law. I am really glad that I did that. Family meetings can be helpful, and there's a really good article on the resource list that's going to give you a lot of good tips for planning those. The next step after talking with family and agreeing that planning needs to begin is to assess the needs of the person for whom you're providing care. And there are 6 or 7 major categories to consider as you develop your care plan. And we're going to be looking at these in a bit more detail in my next slides. Health and medical needs, financial considerations, in other words, is the residence suitable for aging in place? Does the household require a lot of upkeep and regular maintenance? How independent is the person? Can they care for their own personal needs? And transportation is a big one. Once they can no longer drive, how long will they continue to be able to care for themselves? And the last but most important category, is there a support system of willing families and friends in place? Now, there are various online tools as well as books for organizing and managing care. 2 of my favorites are one called Next Step in Care. This is a website. It has excellent downloadable checklists and organizational tools. It really is an amazing resource, so I hope you'll check that one out. Or if you're more of a hands-on book person, AARP's Checklist for Family Caregivers, A Guide to Making It Manageable, also another excellent resource. The book was developed as a joint effort between AARP and the American Bar Association. So if you purchase this book or its Kindle edition, you're going to get access to a website where you can download the checklists that are shown in the book. And you can find links to both of these really excellent resources on my list. Of course, we all want to stay in our own homes until the day we die. This concept is referred to as aging in place. Aging in place is defined by the CDC as the ability to live in one's own home and community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. Now, aging in place can be a good option for seniors. However, there's some important issues to carefully, realistically, and honestly consider. Since most people need care due to declining cognitive and medical issues, it makes sense to look at that area first. Medical needs will dictate what type of placement is best. Can the person remain safely at home? Or is it necessary to look at a facility that can best meet their needs? Medical needs also determine location. If the person has complex health issues, you want to be sure that there are physicians, clinics, and hospitals nearby. How easily can you hire someone to come into the home and provide care? The COVID pandemic has contributed to a decline in the availability of personal care providers. There's a nationwide shortage right now, and it's really frustrating these days to find reliable and affordable in-home care. We want to look at the residence. Is it single story? Is there appropriate lighting? As we age, our vision naturally tends to decline. Can decreased mobility issues be handled with ramps and zero-step entries? Can doorways accommodate wheelchairs? Are there walk-in showers? variable height countertops. Modifications and renovations are costly. And we always want to consider the impact that those modifications may have on resale value. Now, it goes without saying that finances play a huge role in determining the care plan, whether it be the feasibility of the person remaining safely in their own home or moving your loved one into your home. Is the person self-sufficient, or will they need extensive support from family and friends? Are the family and friends nearby? Are they able to help in an emergency at a moment's notice? Lack of easy access to transportation can result in escalating problems, including isolation, missed medical appointments, and poor nutrition. How are you going to get around once you're no longer able to drive? And lastly, can your budget handle the costs of round-the-clock in-home care should you need that? And we are looking at thousands of dollars a month. So once you've decided that care at home is best, you may have to decide whose home. Now, if you're looking at providing care for a parent, the question is, will you move mom or dad into your home? Or maybe will you move into your parents' home? Now, if you're caring for a spouse, it's a different story because you'll most likely stay in your own home. It's important that this decision be well thought out and that your reasoning needs to be examined carefully. Are you considering care at home because of safety issues, including, your worry about all the infectious diseases that are circulating these days? Are you making the decision on a purely emotional level? Because here it's really important to think with your head as well as your heart. Do you think that you can't afford facility care? Or are you overwhelmed by obligation? Or maybe you think that you don't have any other good options. Or maybe all of the above. These are all legitimate reasons. And what I'm asking you to do is to examine your reasons and factor those into your decision about where and how to provide care. Doing so can help you to feel more confident that your decision is a sound one. If you're considering having a parent move in with you, I highly recommend that you take a look at the section in the Dummies book that covers this, because there are so many important factors to consider. Because this can be a life-changing situation, both positive and negative, and the ramifications are many. So here's a few things to look at. First of all, what does your parent want? Have they participated in the decision? Have you consulted other family members who live in the home? What type of care is needed? What type of medical needs are there? Can you handle those? Or will you need to hire in-home care, either personal care or health care? Does the person need constant supervision, especially in the case of someone who has dementia? And will you be able to attend to their social and emotional needs? Do you have time to provide the type of care needed? Are you still working? It's estimated that about 40% of all caregivers leave their jobs to have more time to care for their loved one. That was actually true of me when I began caring for my mom. Are you prepared for all of the physical and emotional challenges? I threw out my back trying to transfer my mom from her wheelchair into my car. And I ended up seeing a therapist to help me deal with all of the emotions and the isolation that came with my role. Sometimes roles get muddled. What happens with that is that some people start to lose an aspect of the relationship that they very much valued because that person is always looked upon as a caregiver. What will the financial impact be? Can you afford to leave your job to provide care? Modifications of the remodeling necessary to make your home accessible or large enough to accommodate another person can be really costly. Will your loved one be able to contribute financially? Be sure to work out all of these details up front. When we live with somebody 24/7, issues that were manageable in small doses can suddenly become deal breakers. The stresses of caregiving can cause even the best relationships to rupture. But what if the relationship was problematic to begin with? If you're already dealing with unresolved issues such as abuse, neglect, alcoholism, or divorce, that just adds another layer of complexity to the situation. And what about the rest of the family? How much of a disruption to family life will this new situation create? Has everyone who lives in the house agreed and understands the changes that will be necessary? Will other family members feel displaced? I have only skimmed the surface here. Having a loved one move in with you can be a wonderful, positive experience. And I've heard many people say that it was the best decision they could have made. But that's not true for everyone. So I want you to go into the situation being aware of the many challenges. Now, wherever you end up providing care, you need to recognize that moving from one's home, one's comfort zone, is difficult. It's tough regardless of your age or circumstance, but it's even more challenging for the elderly and especially for those who have dementia. So recognize how difficult it will be for your loved one to move and what they're going to most likely lose: memories, access to friends, familiarity, autonomy, privacy, and financial independence. Expect a period of grief because they will be grieving for their previous lives. As in everything else involving caregiving, open, honest communication is key, because your loved one needs to feel as if his or her voice is being heard and respected. We've talked about this. Most people want to stay in their own homes as they age. I know I do. Many elderly people can do just fine with some support from family and friends. Many need to hire people to help with housekeeping and yard maintenance. There are community resources that can help with meals and transportation. Your local senior centers are actually the best place to find these types of services. Some people may need to hire in-home care from an agency on a part-time basis to help with their needs. Now, in-home care is non-medical care that focuses on personal care, household duties, meal prep, transportation to medical appointments, companionship, etc. As I mentioned earlier, this is also known as custodial care. By the way, home is defined as anywhere the person resides. So you can also arrange for these services if a person is living in a facility to supplement their care. In-home or personal care employees cannot dispense medications. Now, if the medications are sitting out, they can remind the person to take their meds, but they can't actually administer them. Most agencies have a 4-hour minimum, and the average cost in our area, $36, $50 an hour. It's really pricey. In-home personal care is not covered by Medicare or insurance. And if you have long-term care insurance, home care may be covered, but every policy is different. You can hire an independent home care worker. Usually they're going to be less expensive than going through an agency. However, you need to make sure that they're insured and bonded and that a background check has been conducted. If your loved one has dementia, be sure to use an agency that trains its employees in dementia care strategies. In the Tri-Valley area, that includes senior helpers, visiting angels, comfort keepers, comfort care, just to name a few. You can always look on their websites to see how they prepare their employees. Also, always be sure that the agency uses all necessary precautions to mitigate the spread of COVID or some of those other infectious diseases that are circulating right now. As I mentioned earlier, there's currently a nationwide shortage of personal care workers. It can be hard to find a person or an agency that's going to work well with you. I've got some good resources on my list to help you when it comes to hiring in home care. A lot of people confuse home care and home health care. The key word here is health. Home health care includes services from skilled health professionals such as nurses, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech pathologists, respiratory therapists, dietitians, etc. In order to qualify for home health care, you must be under the care of a physician. The care must be deemed medically necessary, and the person must be homebound. These services can continue for as long as necessary to prevent the person from declining. And I'm going to be talking more about that in our March webinar, the one about navigating the healthcare environment, becoming an advocate. Now, most physicians will order home health care services upon discharge from a hospital stay or surgery. They don't want you to end up back in the hospital. Home health care is covered by every insurance plan, including Medicare. Your physician or the hospital discharge planner can give you lists of agencies in your area, or you can go to Medicare's Care Compare site to find agencies. So before we look more at facility care, I'd like to take a moment to address the issue of guilt. Now, it's hard when someone you love is placed in a facility. When the time comes and you realize that you are unable to provide the necessary care at home, it doesn't mean that you're giving up on your loved one, your relationship, your responsibilities, or on control. You're recognizing that you can't do it alone. You're relying on and trusting an extended support system, and you're still an active care partner and an advocate, ensuring that your loved one will get the best care possible. Often recognizing that facility placement is necessary is the most loving act that one can do because it improves the quality of life from a medical and social perspective. And just as importantly, it frees you up to resume your role of wife or husband or son or daughter or grandchild or friend or whatever it was. As I mentioned earlier, facility care these days is very different from what we saw in the past. So once the decision has been made that some type of facility placement is necessary, the next step is determining the best and most appropriate options. Determining the type of facility is, of course, dictated by many factors, but medical needs are of primary concern. And we'll talk more later about the different types of facilities, and I'll give you some resources to help you find facilities and to evaluate them. Cost is always an important consideration because facility care is expensive. You'll want to look at the type of medical care that's available at the facility and if it meets not only your loved one's needs at the time of initial placement, but you'll want to anticipate future needs. I mentioned that the only constant is change. So is there a plan in place for when the person's medical and/or cognitive condition declines? Will you need to supplement facility care with outside caregivers? Location is huge. I think it's one of the most difficult decisions. Is it important for the location to be near you so you can be available to visit and help with care? But does being close to you involve some kind of a move, out of your loved one's community? That's really hard on the person. We talked about transfer trauma a while back. But on the other hand, you have to take your own needs into consideration as well if you're the primary care partner and advocate. What about the rest of the family? Distance caregiving is challenging. This is a really difficult decision. And it was a huge consideration for our family when my mom needed facility care. No easy answer. Again, one of the many reasons why it's so important to think about all of this in advance and make sure that all family members can weigh in on the decision. Now, I do have a chart on the website that gives you many more details, including ballpark costs for each option within the San Francisco metropolitan area. So, independent senior living refers to apartments, condominiums, or even small homes that are part of a facility or a complex. Independent senior living communities cater to seniors who are self-sufficient and who really don't need hands-on care. Residents live in private apartments or homes that typically include a kitchen, but residents also have the option of restaurant-style dining or a combination. These communities usually offer a broad range of intellectual, physical, social activities. And people either purchase their residence or pay rent, depending on the facility. Now, assisted living communities provide housing and care to seniors who may need some assistance with daily tasks, but who do not require the skilled care that's provided in a nursing home. In fact, if someone needs medical care, for example, if they're unable to care for a colostomy, they cannot be in assisted living. They'll need skilled nursing care. Assistance with medications, activities of daily living, meals, and housekeeping are routinely provided. Residents live in private apartments that frequently contain kitchenettes. Staff is available 24 hours a day, as are activities and entertainment opportunities. And in most cases, transportation to appointments is also available. Now, this is where you have to be careful with assisted living. There's a base price for it, but your actual price will increase based on what's called a level of care assessment. This assessment can significantly increase the monthly cost, sometimes as an additional $2,000 to $3,000 a month. So Alzheimer's and dementia care, also known as memory care, is often provided in a secure area of an assisted living community or a nursing home, possibly on a separate floor or maybe even in its own wing. The secure aspect of memory care communities is intended to prevent residents from wandering off and becoming lost, which, by the way, is pretty common for those with dementia. Residents usually live in semi-private or private rooms. There are structured activities conducted by staff members who are specifically trained to care for those with dementia. Now, residential care homes, also known as board-in care homes, are private homes within a regular old neighborhood that have been adapted to accommodate the care of a limited number of residents, usually 4 to 6. Live-in caregivers provide 24-hour supervision and assistance for residents, but there is no actual medical care unless the family has hired a home health aide. Residential care homes offer home-cooked meals, limited social activities, and management of activities of daily living, such as grooming, transferring, etc. This type of placement may be a good fit for those who really don't need all of the social amenities of assisted living. And board and care homes tend to be less expensive than larger facilities. It's very important that you check out the board and care home to be sure that your loved one's needs can be met. Now, my biggest concern is that in some board and care homes, sometimes there's limited socialization and the main activity is TV watching. Skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes are for those who require 24-hour monitoring and medical assistance. Now, one must have a doctor's order to reside in a skilled nursing facility. Typically, residents suffer from severe, debilitating physical or mental conditions that leave them unable to care for themselves. They may be bedridden, wheelchair bound, or have medical needs that require daily skilled nursing care. Now, nursing homes are the only type of long-term care facility that has a registered nurse on staff. But most care is provided by LVNs or certified nursing assistants. These facilities usually have a medical director, a physician, who can serve as the resident's primary care physician if desired. But many residents choose to have their own physician follow them as long as their physician is willing to do so. There are physical and occupational therapy services, and most of them have dietitians on staff. Now, the good news is that modern nursing homes not only provide for residents' physical medical needs, but they offer activities tailored specifically to individual abilities, along with communal activities and dining for those who are able. So I always recommend that you do your research in selecting a facility. I have a nursing home evaluation tool listed on the resource list. Medicare has an excellent online tool where you can find services in your area. And Medicare, by the way, has very strict guidelines. Each facility that is Medicare approved is evaluated annually, and you can see results on this Care Compare site. Also, if you suspect that somewhere down the road your loved one is going to run out of money and perhaps qualify for Medi-Cal, make sure that the facility you choose initially will accept Medi-Cal should the time come. Most facilities do, but not all. If a patient has started out as private pay in a facility, they cannot be forced to move to another facility once they go on Medi-Cal, as long as that facility accepts Medi-Cal patients. Most do, again, but not all. Now, continuing care retirement communities are an excellent option for long-term care. These are large facilities that have many levels of care in the community. They typically have independent apartments, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. If a resident's needs change, they can smoothly move from one level to the next without having to completely change their environment. Now, this was the type of a facility that my mom was in, and she ended up using all levels of care. And it was a lifesaver for us, and her too. Many of these facilities require buy-in fees. These are usually non-refundable, as well as monthly payments. There are different types of contracts for continuing care retirement communities. So of course, you're going to want to be careful and do your research. So I just thought I would give you a few local examples in the Tri-Valley area. Stone Ridge Creek in Pleasanton has all 3 levels of care: independent apartments and homes, assisted living apartments, and a skilled nursing facility. It's a beautiful complex with an incredible array of amenities, but the buy-in fee is high and the monthly rents are also high. Baywood Court in Castro Valley, Piedmont Gardens in Oakland also have 3 levels of care. Now, the next ones I have listed here are not technically continuing care communities because they don't have all 3 levels of care, remember, ranging from independent to skilled. But I thought it would be helpful to give you some examples of local facilities that have at least 2 levels of care. Heritage Estates in Livermore has independent apartments and assisted living. Should somebody from Heritage need skilled nursing, they'll have to go off-site to an independent skilled nursing facility. The Parkview and Sunrise in Pleasanton have independent apartments and assisted living. The Parkview in Pleasanton has assisted living and memory care. Excuse me, I just realized that that Sunrise only has assisted living and memory care. Sorry about that. So Sunrise, which is in Pleasanton and Oakland, again, has assisted living and memory care. Apologies for that. The Parkview in Pleasanton has assisted living and memory care. The Parkview is part of the Eschaton Aging Services provider that serves Northern California. So it's part of a large corporation. Sunrise in Pleasanton is a brand new facility. The one in Oakland is a little bit older. And Sunrise Senior Living is also a large corporation, a large organization. It has over 200 facilities throughout the United States and Canada. So there are other options for long-term care. There's about 132 state-operated veterans homes in the U.S., and this includes nursing homes, assisted living centers, group homes, and adult day centers. Now, in our area, there are VA facilities in Livermore, Palo Alto, and up in the wine country, up in Yountville. For more information, go to the VA website and search long-term care. Now, the VA site is simply va.gov. For California specifically, it's calvet.ca.gov. Now, niche or affinity communities are for those who have common backgrounds or affiliations. Many are based on previous employment or occupation. So there's over about 100 of these long-term living facilities in the U.S. There are many advantages to this type of long-term care. For many people, interacting with those who have shared interests can be a good thing. Also, the costs tend to be a bit less because sometimes the facilities are subsidized by the founding organization. So some examples in our area include the Masons Home, Reitlinger Community for Jewish Living in Danville, and university-based retirement communities that are affiliated with UC Davis and Stanford. Co-housing is where neighbors and friends design their own community, usually by purchasing a few or a group of homes in a neighborhood. Now, this is best for seniors who are relatively independent. For more information on this, check out the Co-Housing Association of the United States. And then house sharing is less formal than co-housing. This kind of like a roommate situation for seniors is where people share accommodations, living expenses, costs for in-home care if needed, transportation, etc. Now, if you're looking at this on a small screen, you're not going to be able to see this very clearly, but no worries. A copy of this is on the website, so you can access this at that point. But I just kind of wanted to show you what was there. I have all of the housing options and services listed across the top of the page. The first row shows you the average costs in the San Francisco metropolitan area. Now, know that costs vary from state to state and city to city. Now, our area is high, but believe it or not, California is not the highest in the country. But remember, these are ballpark averages. I've tried to give you a realistic range, and I try to update this on a yearly basis. But again, you can't say, oh, I saw this amount on the Hope Hospice chart and try to hold an agency to that, because again, just estimations, averages. Now, in the far left column, I've listed a variety of details and services. So this is an at-a-glance document where I've tried to cram in as much information on one page as I possibly could. I've included information from several different sources. But again, remember that prices change and services change. Again, this is just a very, very general guide for you. The Department of Health and Human Services has one of the best sites I've seen for information on long-term care services. They have something called the LTC Pathfinder. This is an excellent tool for helping you to plan ahead for care based on your age category. Now, of course, the ideal time to do this is if you're under 50. But if you're like most of us, who even wanted to think about old age when we were young? Here are some reliable options for finding housing and other services for long-term care. Now, the first three I have listed on here are free. So after a hospital stay or an outpatient surgery, a discharge planner or a social worker will work with the family to ensure that the patient will continue to receive necessary care and services. The discharge planner can provide you with lists of home health agencies if needed, or help you with finding a skilled nursing facility or a rehab center. By the way, all of these services do require physician's orders. Now, it's the patient or family's responsibility to actually select an agency or care facility, but the discharge planner can provide you with guidance. If the person is on Medi-Cal, be sure to let the discharge planner know this, just in case this information doesn't show up on the chart. This information is really important, especially when selecting a care facility. One of my very favorite online resources is the Family Caregiver Alliance. This website has a tool called the Care Nav. You put in your location, and then lists of options for services in your area are generated. The site also contains an extensive library of fact sheets, articles, checklists, videos, webinars, all on caregiving topics. The Family Caregiver Alliance also offers family consultations for free. I know this is pretty amazing. So in these consultations, you can get an individual assessment of needs and referrals for services. So this is what they call a comprehensive caregiver assessment. You can make an appointment to talk with a real person on the phone who can help you find services in your area. They can also help you to determine eligibility for any legal or financial services that might be available to you. They also offer support groups, respite services, individual counseling, and they can help with long-term planning. Did I mention that all of this is free and there are no income restrictions for this? One of the best games in town is your local senior center. Every center is different, but in general, they offer consultation or case management services. And they can provide referrals for community services such as transportation, nutrition, activities, support groups. Now, right now, many of the services are online. But they're starting to begin to bring more to their facilities, on an in-person basis. To find your local senior center, just Google the name of your city plus senior center. By the way, if you live in Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore, or Sunol, the Senior Support Program of the Tri-Valley is located at the Pleasanton Senior Center. This is an amazing resource. It really does provide comprehensive services. Now, as I mentioned, those first three options are free. You can also hire a geriatric care manager or a certified senior advisor to help you with pretty much every aspect of care planning. Now, some certified senior advisors don't charge their clients, but they're paid by the facilities and the agencies where they provide referrals. So they're kind of like a broker, if you've ever used an insurance broker, or maybe with your Medigap policies, you've used a broker. So it's a similar situation. You can find a geriatric care manager by checking out the website that I have listed here. I also have this listed on my resource list. So I'm sure that you've all seen commercials on TV for A Place for Mom or some of the other senior living placement services. Now, these are generally national franchises that can offer referrals to various services and facilities. They do offer their services for free, but they charge fees to the facility or the agency for whom they're providing a referral. So they may not be totally objective, and they may not offer you the broad range of services or facilities that actually are available in your area. So here's where it's really important to do your research. Also understand, in most cases, they're going to ask you to enter your personal information on the website, your name, email, phone number. What happens typically is you're going to be bombarded with phone calls, emails, and texts. Some people are fine with that. Others of us get very annoyed. So again, just know that when you put in your personal information online, you'll be contacted, maybe more than you would like to be. By the way, I have to tell you, A Place for Mom is one of the largest franchises out there. They actually have one of the best informational websites that I've seen. So in 1973, Congress passed what was called the Older Americans Act. And this act created something called the Area Agencies on Aging. And these are state-run agencies that provide vital services to older Americans and their caregivers. Now, recently, this program has undergone a name change. So Area Agencies on Aging has now become U.S. Aging. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. They're currently using both names, as I'm sure it's going to take a few years for the name change to be implemented. Although I have to admit, U.S. Aging is not quite the mouthful that Area Agencies on Aging is. Now, since their goal in this Older Americans Act was to make aging in place a viable option, the agency coordinates and offers services that help older adults remain as independent as possible. So every county agency offers a minimum of 5 core services: elder rights, including elder abuse prevention, caregiver support programs, nutrition programs such as Meals on Wheels, and health and wellness programs. Under the category of supportive services, we have referral services, in-home services, transportation, home modification, and legal services. Now, my favorite component is what's called the case management program. And as a family caregiver, you can arrange an appointment with the case manager, frequently as a social worker, who can meet with you and your loved one to advise you on the types of public and community services that are available to you. The case manager can do an assessment of the residents to see if your loved one is safe living at home. Also, if you feel that your loved one needs help, but they're unwilling to allow you to help them, this happens, by the way, a lot, the case manager can serve as kind of a mediator. Sometimes elderly people are more likely to listen to a professional rather than a family member. By the way, all of these services are offered at no or very low cost, regardless of your ability to pay. So here's just a little bit more information about U.S. aging. As I mentioned, every county in the U.S. has an agency that provides these comprehensive resources. And these are frequently a part of the county's social services department. By the way, the names may vary by geographic location. For example, the Senior Support Program of the Tri-Valley, which I mentioned earlier, and that's located in the Senior Center in Pleasanton, that serves as the Tri-Valley's local area agency on aging. So to find your area's agency, just go to usaging.org and type in your zip code. I've done quite a bit of research on this. I've discovered that some of the local websites are really good and easy to navigate. Others are really, really difficult. So just to let you know, if you're having trouble locating the agency for your county, let's say you're not either here in Alameda or Contra Costa, send me an email and I can help you find the services you're looking for. Remember, we said it's expensive. How do people pay for long-term care? It's a complex, controversial topic. And I have included some links on my resource page that may provide some guidance. My very favorite resource on this topic is an article from the National Institute on Aging. I've listed this here for you. And again, also on my resource list. But for now, I'm just going to give you a really quick overview. About 28% of people pay for long-term care through private resources. In other words, out of pocket. People can use their personal savings, they can use annuities, trusts. My husband and I have a couple of 401ks that we've designated to pay for long-term care should we need it. Some people use the equity from the sale of their home if they need to move into a facility. That's what my mom did initially when she moved into that senior apartment. Reverse mortgages are loans for senior homeowners that use the home's equity as collateral. To be eligible for a reverse mortgage, residents need to be at least age 62. The home must be owned free and clear, or if there is an existing mortgage balance, it can be paid off completely with the proceeds of the reverse mortgage loan at closing. So for couples, this might be an option if only one person in the household needs facility care, and then the other person can remain in the home. Some people sell their life insurance policy for its present value to raise cash for any reason. This option is usually only available to women age 74 and older and men age 70 and older. You may choose to use the proceeds to pay for long-term care services or whatever else you would like. So this is referred to as a life settlement, and usually the policy needs to be at least $100,000, and you're not going to, well, every company that does these policy purchases is going to be a little bit different, so you're not going to get the full complete value. A viatical life settlement is when the person sells their life insurance to a third party who manages the payout. The person must be over 70, the policy must be at least $100,000, and the policy coverage can't lapse before you're predicted to pass away. And you need to be terminally ill with a life expectancy of less than 2 years. That's kind of a lot. I'd like to stress, though, that before you try to sell a life insurance policy, please check with your accountant or your financial planner to determine if there are any tax implications for you or if the funds you receive are going to negatively impact your ability to apply for government assistance, such as Medi-Cal or VA benefits. Now, if you purchase long-term care insurance in your 30s, your 40s, or your 50s, you might be in good shape now because the old policies tended to be better than the newer ones that have more restrictions on how you spend the funds. Premiums are based on your age when you purchase the plan. Some of the older policies had fixed premiums, but the newer ones have premium increases as you age, and the rate increases can be large. And we keep hearing on the news about long-term care insurance companies that are going bankrupt. Companies rarely sell policies to those with serious health conditions. A few may sell to those with pre-existing or chronic conditions, but they're going to charge significantly higher premiums. The applications include health questionnaires and a medical exam. So I am not by any means an expert on this particular topic. So since long-term care insurance is really complicated, it's a lengthy topic, please check with a financial planner, advisor, an accountant, or an attorney, since everybody's circumstances vary so greatly. Now, public or government funds account for about 70% of long-term care funding. The VA, the Veterans Administration, can provide some assistance for those veterans who qualify based on income and assets. Now, the VA benefit by no means covers all of the costs of long-term care. So as an example, my mom was an Army Air Force nurse in World War II. And then, so after about a year of haggling with the VA, I was able to get her about $800 a month in benefits. When she passed away, the VA tried to recover all the money that they had paid out to her, which is common and legal. But there was no money left in her estate because we had used it all up for her skilled nursing care. So the VA was out of luck. Now, remember earlier how I said that it's really important to document and keep all receipts, financial records. So this is when it comes in handy. And now for Medicare. Now, technically, Medicare does not cover lengthy long-term care. This is a common misconception. Medicare is health insurance, and it will only cover the first 100 days of care in a skilled nursing facility following a hospital discharge after a 3-night admitted stay. The person needs to actually be admitted to the hospital, not just on observation. This can get tricky, and I'm going to be talking about this topic more in my March webinar that's on navigating the healthcare environment. So Medicare will pay only if the person needs medical care, not simply custodial care, which is, remember, help with eating, dressing, moving around. Now, the first 20 days are fully covered. Yay. The last 80 require a copay of, this year the copay is $200 a day. Now, 80 days at $200 a day is $16,000. Now, that's a lot, but it's still better than the $30,000 plus you'd be paying without it. But after that, nothing. And remember that the average duration of long-term care in a nursing home is 3 years. About 43% of all long-term care is paid from Medi-Cal. Now, Medi-Cal is a government-funded program for low-income people. Medi-Cal, by the way, is called Medicaid in all of the other states, and benefits and coverage vary greatly from state to state. So in this webinar, since we're California, I'm only going to be talking about Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal has a program to cover limited in-home care services. So this is called the In-Home Supportive Services Program, or IHSS. Medi-Cal recipients can qualify for in-home custodial care. In other words, help with those basic needs, not medical needs. People can qualify for about 4 to 8 hours of care per day, all depending on what they need. Now, most of this care is provided by family members or friends. These family members and friends can apply to be a caregiver, and they're going to be paid for their services. And they'll need to go through an online training program for this. I have some more information about this on my website. Now, Medi-Cal only pays for long-term care in a facility under certain circumstances. The person must meet the low income and asset requirements, and they must require medically necessary care in a skilled nursing facility or nursing home. Again, the requirements vary from state to state. And in California, not every skilled nursing facility accepts Medi-Cal patients. So you always need to check on that. I mentioned that earlier. But Medi-Cal will cover 100% of costs in a nursing home. However, if you receive Medi-Cal coverage for long-term care services, in that nursing facility, federal law does require that the state try to recover the amount that Medi-Cal has spent on your behalf from your estate after you die. But if there's no money left and you have documentation such as receipts and bank accounts to prove it, then they're out of luck. So what if someone doesn't have a medical condition that qualifies them for a nursing home and they need to be in assisted living? So at this time, Medi-Cal will only cover long-term care in assisted living facilities in certain counties and only at specified facilities. Now, they have a program called the Assisted Living Waiver Program. Right now, there tends to be a wait list because this is kind of a great deal. But fortunately for us, they're adding more and more facilities. Now, there's several in Alameda County right now, Castro Valley, Hayward, and Oakland, and a few more in Contra Costa. I was really excited to find out that recently a facility in Livermore has been added to the designated list. And again, that's exciting because up until then, the closest to the Tri-Valley area was in Castro Valley. Now, again, I have a link to the designated assisted living waiver facilities. I have a link to that on your resource list. Okay, paying for long-term care is a huge, huge topic. So you can check out my resource list for more info. But honestly, your best resource is going to be your financial planner, your accountant, or your attorney. In closing, my goal today was to give you a foundational understanding about the decisions and options involved in planning for care. I also wanted to provide you with the resources that you're going to need to do further research, depending on your situation. Trying to manage my mom's care was one of the most challenging things I have ever done. Fortunately, care partners today have so many more resources and much more support than I did 14, 15 years ago. So whether you're anticipating this journey or you're already in the middle of it, I hope you're going to take advantage of the help that's out there. Now, the reality is, the information is not going to really be relevant to you until you actually need it. Sometimes the caregiving journey can be a long one. So hang on to the link for this webinar and onto my resource list because you may find that you need it down the road.